Hey guys, this is Rob from chainsawguitartuition.net. Today we're going to be talking about two-handed tapping. So two-handed tapping is when you use the fingers of both hands, hence two-handed, to tap the strings, like this. You can either use this technique to get a fast flurry of notes like I did there, that kind of thing, or you can use it to get a wide range of notes that would kind of be impossible with one hand. So if you're playing something here, and you wanted to add this kind of thing. This technique is usually used to produce a legato type sound, and when I say usually used for legato, that's exactly what I mean, because legato actually refers to the type of sound. It means smooth, it comes from Italian. It means smooth and connected sound. So for example, what I did there, this one, there's no sort of choppy notes, there's no gaps between the notes, they're all kind of smooth and connected. That's legato. You can also use this technique to get a staccato effect, which is the opposite, okay? So that would be more like this. Where the notes are not actually connected, there's kind of jumps between them. So when people say legato, they're actually referring to the type of sound, not any specific technique. This technique has been used on various stringed instruments throughout history. For example, Niccolò Paganini, the famous 19th century violinist, would sometimes bounce his bow on the strings while stopping them, in other words, fretting them with the other hand. The clavichord is a keyboard instrument that used hammers, called tangents, to fret strings, which is a very similar action to tapping on guitar, except it used mechanical hammers instead of fingers. Most famously, Stevie Wonder used an amplified clavichord known as a clavinet on the song Superstition. One of the first people to use this technique on a guitar or guitar-like instrument was Roy Smeck, a ukulele player in 1932. It was also used pretty early on by jazz guitarist George Van Eps in the 1950s and Carlos Santana in 1970. The technique was originally pioneered by guitarists in the jazz scene and started to seep through to the rock and metal world around the start of the 70s. One of the first rock guitarists to use the technique was Steve Hackett from Genesis on the song The Return of the Giant Hogweed. That's from 1971. The technique was also used around this time by Brian May from Queen, Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top, and Duane Allman from the Allman Brothers Band. Although the technique was already well known among guitarists, it didn't really reach a popular mainstream following until it was used by the guitarist Eddie Van Halen from the band Van Halen. He was not one of the earliest to tap, but he uses the technique extensively on the tracks Eruption and Spanish Fly from the band's first two albums. The technique really started to take off in the rock guitar world when it was taken up by Joe Satriani and his students Steve Vai and Kirk Hammett. It is also most notably used by Stanley Jordan, Enver Ismailov and Buckethead. Of course, no discussion on tapping would be complete without mentioning Randy Rhoads, who was very classical influenced and pioneered the technique around the same time as Eddie Van Halen. Since the technique has become more popular, a variety of instruments have been designed to take advantage of this new way of playing. A guy called Emmett Chapman created the Chapman stick and the NS stick, which can be played either as a normal guitar or purely using the tapping technique. There's also the Megatar by Mobius Megatar, the War Guitar, the Bunker Guitar, the Hammer-tar, and the Harpeggi, which was used on the soundtrack to God of War 3. I'll put a link in the description about the Harpeggi because it's quite an interesting demonstration, because it's like a keyboard instrument. You can do sort of slides and stuff on it like a guitar, but it's also keyboard. Recommend you check that out. As I mentioned earlier, the technique of tapping is when you hammer your fingers onto the strings to cause them to sound. So you're tapping the strings to cause them to sound. If you think of your fingers as little hammers, this becomes a lot easier to see. So you're bending at the knuckle joint joining your hand, okay? That's where your fingers are bending. You kind of have them hooked over like that and you're going up and down at that joint. You can either hold your hand so your fingers are parallel to the frets, like this, or you can come from more of a picking angle, so you're doing this kind of thing, which I was doing earlier. The idea is, in either case, you want to tap the string onto the fret. You want to be quite close, tap it quite close to the fret. You need to be quite accurate with this. Tap onto the fret so it reverberates off. You don't even need to go as far as the wood. In fact, I recommend you don't go as far as the wood. Just tap it onto the fret. so where you'd normally fret. The second part of this, right, you're going to go hammer onto the fret, and then you either pull off by pushing away, so you get the string to sound, or pluck the string by pulling towards you. Either way, you're plucking the string to get the open string in this case, or if you fret a note below it, you get the note below it. Now throughout this video I've been playing with a clean tone, but this technique's a lot easier if you use distortion or overdrive or some sort of compression. So for the example piece I'm going to use some overdrive, plus it sounds cool. Okay, links to the free full lesson on my website is in the description, along with the tab to this. I should be able to get some more technique videos up soon, and until then, I'll see you next time.